This is why Albania was among the first countries in Europe to pass new advanced legislation against anti-Semitism, why we have integrated Holocaust education into our school curricula, and why we're building now in Europe, in the middle of Europe, two particular cultural spaces inspired by the gravitational force of the shining examples set by our Muslim and Christian grandparents who risked their lives to save Jewish lives.
Hi guys, in this video I asked the question if Jared Kushner is taking over Jeffrey Epstein's network. It serves as a part 2 to Jared Kushner's quote-unquote Epstein Island. I'm a little bit sick, but not that bad. So in the beginning I want to show you this important video by Jake Shields. There are documented cases where Israelis were poisoning the wells, and because Netanyahu always says that this is a blood libel, and he's talking about the long history, but in the history of Israel, there are documented cases. Don't want you to forget that. That's also a not so unrelated topic. I don't want you to miss. It went viral, but it's very important here. The Zionist basically says we can control now the world via AI.
Because over the past 2 years, the AI companies have been moving towards alignment. So instead of the algorithms sort of honestly representing what's in the data, we're finding that these chatbots and the text-to-image models are increasingly showing us exactly what the companies want us to see, okay? So it's becoming intentional, which means that instead of trying to control the whole world and trying to somehow manage what's happening in this big blob of Wikipedia and social media, we can go directly to the companies with clear technical and advocacy solutions. For the first time, there's a path to correcting the digital world.
And correcting the digital world, in my opinion, relates to tikkun olam, which means repairing or correcting the world. So unbelievable, she said it out loud. And here's my video about the messianic tech oligarchy tikkun olam, because most of the tech companies already follow this tikkun olam, which means that only one set of people will survive in the end. You can guess which one. According to Kabbalistic writings, according to Gershon Scholem, to be correct. So I found a very interesting article about the island by Al-Jaff, a geopolitical analyst. He has it on behind a paywall on Substack, but here are a lot of informations already on X. This is the summary. So 3 Syrian-born Qatari billionaires with a 12 billion Syrian reconstruction portfolio sat behind a US sanctions wall called the Caesar Act for 6 years, waiting patiently for the right moment. This act served as a wall that blocked access to their financing and sanctioned nearly all their wealth. They lobbied and partnered with President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, on a $4 billion Albanian resort. Kushner, convinced his father-in-law, POTUS Donald Trump, to sign the law that brought the wall down by removing all the sanctions on Syria. 6 months later, the resort broke ground. The brothers' Syrian reconstruction portfolio became financeable. The Trump family took a position. The Albanian government rolled out the carpet. No registered lobbyist appeared in any filing. in any filing. So he's going deep into the topic. So Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania, personally chaired the committee that granted strategic investor status for the island. And he was introduced to Kushner. Kushner was introduced to Rama on his yacht, on the yacht of Ned Rothschild. Here's the exact timeline. So if he's right, then Donald Trump lifted the sanctions so that his son-in-law or his daughter can make business. That would be, I mean, high level of corruption if his thesis is correct. Of course, the Trumps would dispute this, but the timing is very interesting, and you can read the whole article. And then I looked a little bit more into the brothers. How did they, here is Edi Rama with Ivanka Trump. Then I looked a little bit more into the brothers. How did they make their money? Here, they made it with construction. They were also involved in the World Cup. There was a big corruption scandal, if you might remember. Why did it go to the Middle East, the World Championship? And then I asked, did they reconstruct after wars? Yes, the Kayat brothers are actively involved in post-war reconstruction in Syria, their country of origin. So they profit from the wars because after the wars they reconstruct. And that reminded me of BlackRock. And before the video, I wanted to ask if they are also involved, but I forgot about it. I do it live now. BlackRock involved with the company of the brothers. Yeah, it's always difficult with the spelling. I don't think so, but that idea came to me while I was thinking about the video. Yes. Oh, wow, you have it live now. Yes, BlackRock has a minor institutional shareholdings in two publicly listed companies linked to the Kayat brothers. So no evidence of direct partnerships, but BlackRock is also involved. But more importantly, there were accusations here. Syria and England. During the Civil War, there were unproven UK court allegations later dismissed that the brothers channeled funds to Al-Nusra Front, an Al-Qaeda affiliate. One tangential report on Al-Nusra noted separate Israeli medical treatment for some fighters and possible indirect support in border areas. But this does not link the Kayat brothers to Israel. Well, you can see for yourself, or you can think for yourself, because we know this. It was said by, oh, we have it here also. What was said in Congress.
Bin Laden, who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding.
That was a hearing about USAID, which funds all these Islamic terrorist organizations, of course, on behalf of Israel, because US government is occupied by Israel, you know that by now. And he doesn't name al-Nusra specifically, but in the report to the hearing, they talk about HTS, which is al-Nusra rebranded. I have that here. Here, this is about the hearings that reached al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate, later rebranded as HTS. So you saw that here. Of course, it was dismissed, but it's an interesting information, isn't it? And by the way, Rothschild protege Peter Mandelson was on that Rothschild's boat together with BlackRock Larry Fink's son Josh while emailing Jeffrey Epstein. So this boat plays a major role in all of that. And then there's another article, very interesting, by Tom Elliott, a very deep dive. We will go into that, but that's the spoiler. The network is the one Jeffrey Epstein spent his last decade assembling. Now we go into the article. And I'm only talking about the Epstein connections here. So Ned Rothschild himself does not appear in Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs, but we know that Ariane de Rothschild and appears in the emails, and Lynn Forrester de Rothschild has this Epstein connections. But here, so they show Mandelson seeking Epstein's advice on his post-government career, using Epstein as a back channel to help Ned Rothschild. Here, you can read all of this yourself. And again, Ned Rothschild, it was Ned Rothschild's boat where they supposedly discovered the island. I think that's only a story because, I mean, I'm sure they were there, but they had that in mind already when they went on the boat. In September, planning the same Barak dinner, Ehud Barak and Epstein Associated suggested Tim has moved to London, but I think good to invite friends of Chess and Ned. Epstein replied that he would invite both. So it's not a direct connection, but Ned would not come, but would be impressed. This by itself is not a smoking gun. And here, the Wall Street Journal reported, based on Epstein's leaked appointment calendars, that Ariane de Rothschild had met with Epstein more than a dozen times. And here, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild is involved. We will come to Kushner in a second. So Ned Rothschild person appears in the Epstein files only at 1 degree of separation. Then the Apollo vector, you might remember that the guy who was on Apollo's board is now the prosecutor in the district in New York, appointed by Donald Trump. I don't think he has that here. The man marketing the candidate's son-in-law to the Gulf in 2016 was the same man who in his off hours was telling Epstein and Michael Wolff that we both love you and want to be your butlers. Here. Tom Barak. The infrastructure that brought Kushner into the Gulf in the first place and that converted him from political naive, to Saudi confidant was the late 2010s network operated by Tom Barak, Trump's inauguration committee chairman. Barak's documented relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, captured across years of DOJ released emails, includes the 2012 How is my role model salutation. So Tom Barak is the key figure here. And there's finally the older financial vector. Leon Black paid Epstein 158 million. And in the same window, Apollo's real estate lending arm extended a 140 million loan to Kushner companies. The Security Exchange Commission quietly closed an Apollo inquiry shortly after Apollo co-founder George Harris had been making regular White House visits to Kushner, and Apollo provided more than 300 million in mezzanine financing to the Brookfield rescue of 666 Fifth Avenue, the Kushner's family's signature troubled asset. You remember that? So that's the same guy who was involved in this. And Ned Rothschild, the man whose social circle overlapped substantially with Epstein during Epstein's most active decade, introduced him to the Albanian prime minister, who is now expediting his 1.4 billion development on a former Soviet submarine base. There's a document in the DOJ release worth pausing on because it makes a point about both the substance and the curatorial choices of the file dump himself. It reads, Apollo Epstein Kushner connection. The author, identifiable from the surviving body text and from a long trail throughout the release, is Christopher Delorio, a financial industry whistleblower who has been writing to the Securities Exchange Commission, the Department of Justice, the IRS, and others since at least 2017, alleging that an Apollo Epstein Kushner triangle has operated a money laundering and stock fraud network through small cap public shell companies. Unbelievable. So the accusations Delorio levels against Liam Black, Jared Kushner, Mark Rowan, Apollo, and Epstein, all public figures, none of them in any sense private, appear on the page untouched. What is gone is the part that would let a reader access to whom Delorio was writing, when, with what kind of distribution, and to which federal officials he was copying. We don't know that. So this is an important puzzle piece missing. So none of that means he's wrong. It means his correspondence is what it is, a contemporaneous record of a financial industry insider attempting for the better part of a decade to get federal regulators to investigate exactly the Apollo Epstein Kushner triangle. And I want to remind you that Leon Black has the worst allegations against him in the whole files. I don't even want to repeat it. So what is being built? That's also interesting, but you already know there are tunnels, and it's a ex-military base. So this is his closing. The story of the last decade is not finding that Jared Kushner was Jeffrey Epstein's friend. It is that Kushner now operates with the explicit backing of the same Gulf sovereigns and through the same brokers and on the same financial scaffolding, the kind of private jurisdiction infrastructure that Epstein himself spent his last 15 years assembling on a much smaller budget. The infrastructure outlived its previous owner. The network found a successor. The successor's father-in-law is back in the White House, and the next island is bigger. So you should read the whole article, but the video gets too long then. And then I found another thing which holds the key to everything. Here, DD Geopolitics posted that Eddie Rama made a speech in the Knesset, and I said, oh, that sounds familiar. And I searched and found. So, and his son, I don't know, I didn't check it, but according to this guy, his son was converted to Judaism at a young age. But we don't need that because we have a much more important thing. He is connected to Chabad Lubavitch. Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, who is Catholic and known for his warm relations with the Jewish community in Israel, seen writing a request for prayer before entering the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Ohel at the old Montefiore Cemetery in Queens. So you can already ask yourself, what is he doing in New York? Yeah, well, he's connected to Chabad Lubavitch, as is Jared Kushner, and as is Donald Trump. This is the connection. It's the Chabad Mafia. And just to remind you, Putin is also connected to Chabad Lubavitch, and he wished Israel that they can rebuild the temple. I didn't find the article with that picture. Maybe um, it's built together, but it's a real article. I just didn't find it with the picture, but I wanted to show you the picture. Maybe it will be in my thumbnail. So to sum it up, we don't know if Jared Kushner is so brazen that he also overtakes the blackmail business via minors from Jeffrey Epstein. I would hope not. And he doesn't strike me, but who knows? I mean, psychopaths, you don't really, he seems like it, a decent, calm guy and so on. I don't know, but at least he seems to take over the network. And the connections, the Epstein connections with Donald Trump, I mean, it's like, just to repeat it, William Barr, whose father brought Epstein to the school, himself was in a law firm which defended Epstein. The now Attorney General, Todd Blanche, is a friend of the defense attorneys of Maxwell. I mean, it's he has so many connections. The Trump family has so many connections to the Epstein network. It's unbelievable. And yeah. And of course, I found the connection to the unavoidable Chabad Lubavitch, which I have a lot to say about in my book, The Open Secret, and in videos, but the videos are in German. I cover them for, I don't know, a decade or something, at least 2017 when Donald Trump became president. And they think in her own writings that we, the Gentiles, have inferior souls. And I think that explains a lot, don't you think?